Hi everyone, Kevin Annett, Eagle Strong Voice here. Outside my old alma mater, this is my high school in the background, where I attended 50 years ago now. I was in grade 8. All my junior and senior high school was spent here in Vancouver, University Hill Secondary. Now here, 50 years ago, I first began to learn basic lessons of life, namely that the criminals are in charge. An anecdote about that: there was a family that ran the roost here. They're called the Cohen family. Jack Cohen, the father, owned Army and Navy department stores. He also owned a lot of judges and politicians, so he kind of ran the local community. His children went here. Jackie Cohen was the oldest. You might remember her. She was one of the big financial backers of former Premier Gordon Campbell and his various assorted criminal activities, drug dealing, and the usual kind of mob connections that British Columbia politicians have. Well, Jackie and Casey and Jeff Cohen, the three Cohen kids, used to wander the halls of the school like they owned the place. They never had to attend classes. They would, cuss out teachers. They do whatever the hell they wanted, and there was never any repercussion. It was interesting, as a 14-year-old, I'm sitting there going, how come they get to mouth off to the principal and they're never reprimanded? So, but it got more serious than that, because Jackie Cohen actually killed two fellow students at a party. There was one of our neighbors, in fact, it was the Spitzer family. They lived right next door to us on Knox Road here in University Hill. And their son, Matt Spitzer, went to one of the parties, the infamous parties at the Cohen house, where they used to do drugs and bring in prostitutes, the whole bit, right? The Mounties were always ordered never to intervene, and they never did. And Jackie Cohen laced some LSD that they gave to Matt Spitzer with strychnine. He died a few years later as a result of it, but in the meantime he went completely crazy. It brought out kind of a latent schizophrenia in him, and he eventually jumped off Lionsgate Bridge as a result of that. On another occasion, Jackie Cohen killed a second person. She was driving her sports car at 150 miles an hour along Chancellor Boulevard and ran into a guy, a father of three, and killed him. Well, Jackie didn't even do a day in jail, let alone trial. She got off from her father's political and legal connections. And so it made me realize that, at a young age, money rules and the criminals are in charge, and the rest of us have to go along with it or face major repercussions. Now, part B of this is the repercussions we faced as the Annett family, because not far from here, there was University Hill United Church. My mother was the superintendent there in the early part of the 1970s. And Mom and Dad had the audacity to organize an exchange trip with guess where? Aboriginal communities in Hazelton, British Columbia. And they brought down Native kids into this community, and we went up there and stayed there, which was really my first eye-opening experience of what it was like in a genocidal-struck Native village. So that really turned my life around. But as a result, Mom and Dad went ahead and organized that against the wishes of the local University Hill establishment here. As a result, after that, Mom was not only thrown out as superintendent of the United Church here, and we were literally cold-shouldered out of the church. We stopped going there. But two local dignitaries, their names were Bill Sauter and Charlie Kerr. They were two senior university officials. Actually, they have buildings named after them now. And they came to my father soon after that and advised him that University Hill might not be the best place for the Annetts to be living. And so we were forced out of the community. We ended up downtown. They made sure Dad didn't get a lot of work. They badmouthed him and smeared him all through, in the business world where he worked, and he couldn't get any work. So we ended up the next year living in a hotel in the west end of Vancouver. And everyone at U-Hill shunned me. They didn't want anything to do with me after. And maybe that's what kind of made me an instinctive radical at a young age, because soon after that, I challenged the student council. I said, why do we need an adult supervisor? Aren't we supposed to be a democratic body here? And I urged people to boycott student council elections, not pay their fees, and set up instead a student assembly that would be, not a puppet student government run by an adult supervisor, but an actual self-governing student assembly. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? 50 years later, still doing the same stuff, calling for common law assemblies, a republic based on people's self-governance. So it's interesting, the seeds that were planted at a young age, the horrible experience I had at a young age having my family destroyed because of the prejudice and criminality right here in this neighborhood that inadvertently we were challenging just by being ourselves. But I learned at a young age that if in a criminal-run society like this, the people at the top are psychopaths and criminals, you either play along or you're immediately targeted. And to be a consistently honest person in this culture is to be exiled. And I've faced that exile for over 50 years, which is why none of what we're going through now is really surprising me that much with the COVID police state. I guess I've been prepared for this for my entire life. But anyway, you can read more of this at my books online, especially my most recent book, Unbroken, My Life as a Truth Teller, which you can get on Amazon. But this is Kevin Annett, Eagle Strong Voice, more coming up, murderbydecree.com, and the saga continues 50 years later. Thank you.